Hello everybody, and a massive welcome to the very first episode of Geordie Pride. I'm so excited to kick things off, and who better to join us for our debut episode than the fantastic Holly Matthews. I've known Holly for a few years now, and honestly I just adore her. She's had such an incredible journey, and I love everything that she stands for, and for me she's like a little slice of home. You might remember her from the telly and shows like Byker Grove, Waterloo Road Casualty. But what she's done, she's taken a brilliant turn in her career, and she's now rocking it as a self-development coach, an author, and the brains behind the Happy Me project, which you will hear all about in our chat. We have a right good natter with Holly, and she takes us back in time, talking about her days in front of the camera and about how she shifted those gears to become this amazing source of strength and realness. Holly's got this real down-to-earth way of tackling mental health and personal growth, and she's not shy about sharing her own story. And unfortunately, her own story does have loss in it, but she's used it as fuel to help and support others. Holly's story is all about grabbing life by the balls and being true to who you are. It's a great chat, and you're in for some real talk and heartfelt advice, Geordie style. So grab your cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive into our chat with Holly Matthews. You're listening to Geordie Pride, Voices from the Northeast. I'm Hayley, and alongside my cousin Angela, we're thrilled to bring you the stories that share the heart and soul of the northeast of England. Each episode, we'll dive into the lives of extraordinary Geordies and those who call the northeast home, exploring their journeys and celebrating their achievements. From the time to the teas, from the arts to the sports fields, we're here to share the tales of passion, resilience, and of course, Geordie Pride. So whether you're from Whitley Bay or Washington, Gateshead or Gisborough, or you're just fascinated by the spirit of the Northeast, join us as we natter with the best the Northeast has to offer. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we're excited to chat to you. So I've had the absolute pleasure of knowing you for quite a few years, but a lot of our listeners may not have heard of you before. So would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Holly Matthews, and I am currently, I often say I'm a former TV actress, but I do still dabble in the TV acting and in the acting now and then. I'm a self-development coach, and I'm the founder of the Happy Me project, which is in-person events around self-development. It is a book, it's a podcast, it is an online membership. And I say that my job is to help people to feel more happy and less crappy, or help them unlock that. I'm not making them happy. They have to do that bit themselves, but that's essentially my role. And I just potter around doing what I want every day, which is the main point of all of it. Just pottering around, drinking cups of tea and chatting to lovely people like you. That's what I want to do with my life.
That sounds like the life to me. And I love your tagline, the less crap, more happy,
More
less
happy,
crappy.
less crappy. Yeah.
Yeah, it just
I try and simplify stuff. I'm all about, as you will know as well, I like the low-hanging fruit when it comes to self-development. I like easy, well, not even easy, but actionable stuff that we can do every day. And I really, truly believe that we shouldn't have to get to crisis to be able to access stuff. And actually, if for the majority of people, and I'm not talking about those that experience mental illness, there is a difference where you need a clinical intervention, but for a huge chunk of the world, we need everyday solutions, and we need to understand how our brains work, what triggers us, how we can support that. And a lot of that stuff, certainly for our generation, we just haven't been taught. And so for me, that's where my passion lies, is to try and help normal, everyday men and women to find their own solutions. I don't think I fully believe in people. We don't need to be babied through our lives. We need communities, we need support, we can have all of that. But not everybody needs to get to that crisis. And so for me, it's just, and obviously this comes from not just working with clients, but my own lived experience. Like I'm in the weeds as well. Like I'm doing exactly the same stuff for my own life. And a lot of my early self-development stuff came from me coaching myself and trying to get through stuff. And I just feel really passionately about it. And I think, over the last few years, we've seen a lot more talk about mental health, which is great, but zero access to support in most places, unfortunately. And I actually think that if we, on a ground level, taught our kids and taught people how to do this stuff for themselves and how to understand their brains, we would possibly open up those queues in the NHS and spaces for those that are in dire straits to get the access that they need. And that's not what we have at the moment. So I feel, very passionate. I'm obsessed with what I do. I love it. I absolutely love it.
So how did you kind of start the whole Happy Me project, Holly? How did you kind of come about with the idea?
Yeah, so I always did self-development for myself initially. So I started on TV, and being from Newcastle, started in Byker Grove. And if I hadn't done Byker Grove, you'd be very upset and angry at me that I had a Geordie who hadn't been in Byker Grove. You'd all be cross. So I started in Byker Grove. I was 11, and I did 7 years on TV. And growing up on TV, it certainly gives you, there are a lot of stuff that happens for you. You go into a normal school, which sets you apart. You are not always at school. You're dealing with being on TV, seeing your face every day. At the time that I was on TV, we didn't have social media. If you were on TV, you were famous. It might not have been to the Hollywood levels of fame, but people watched the show because there weren't anything else to watch. So we watched what was on TV. We only had 4 channels, 5 if you could get your TV thing aerial to be wiggled around and got channel 5. And so I started doing it for myself. When I was really young, I started exploring my brain and really just trying to find a way to not feel crap. Like I was starting to have a lot of issues around the way that I looked, and just didn't like myself very much. And what I didn't know was that I was also neurodivergent, and I didn't know that then. And so there was a lot of stuff that came up around that made me feel like an alien. So I did it for myself for a long, long time. And then growing up and going into the entertainment industry and the highs and lows of that world, the auditions, the ones you get, you don't get, and all of that, the stuff that comes with being in that world, I was always learning about that. I very rarely, which I guess is a bit weird for somebody who's in the entertainment industry, but I wouldn't read like fiction books or like make-believe. Like everything I read was around self-development, and I've just always been fascinated by it. In 2014, my husband Ross was diagnosed with brain cancer and then died of brain cancer in 2017. And during those years, I'd become a mum a few years prior to that. That's a natural change. Any parent will obviously be, will say the same. There's a natural change in your life where your world shifts. And I was beginning to assess, how I wanted to work and what I wanted to do with my life. And then when Ross was diagnosed, I started to talk about self-development, and I started to talk about the stuff I was doing for myself. I found that people naturally gravitated towards what I was saying, probably because I was saying it in a very direct way, and I was taking out the highbrow, heavy lifting of psychology and stuff, and I was just making it on a level of how we would talk. And because I wasn't acting, so when Ross was diagnosed, I'd just finished doing BBC Casualty. It was a big few episodes on Casualty, and there'd been a lot of interest after it. I'd played a sexual assault survivor, and it was a big storyline, and there was a lot of interest afterwards. I was booked to do a film. There was, a lot of auditions kind of in the pipeline. Then Ross was diagnosed, and it was, I pulled myself out of everything. And so because of that, I was then pretty bored, like we were in and out of hospital, but I was not doing anything. And I've got a very busy brain, so I like to be doing. And I just found that people were interested in what I was saying. And I then initially started to just, do online courses. And it wasn't specifically the Happy Me project. It was just kind of short courses on confidence. And I started to teach people about confidence initially, how to look confident, but I was also weaving in the kind of mindset stuff that I knew as well. And then during that time, I started to, do some actual training in coaching, and was doing workshops and, just doing all of the learning, but mostly for myself, a little bit as a business idea, but always kind of initially, I think I always just thought I'll just go back to acting at some point, and this will just be another side thing. But I just fell in love with what I did. And when Ross died, there was a huge amount of eyes on his death and our story. So some of that was because of me being an actor, and his dad's also a footballer. And I guess, a lot of people, Ross was, 32 when he died, and I was 32 when he died. And I think people looking in saw themselves in our family, and it was, I guess, a fear response that we look at somebody's story and we see this young family with all of this possibility, and it's terrifying. And so, from a perspective of journalists, they were, we were in every national newspaper. There was paparazzi at the funeral. It was everywhere. And this gave me a platform to talk. And I've always found, the phrase "turn your pain into power" is something that drives me. And I always find that taking something awful, something so painful and shit, and finding the good around it creates a sense of purpose. And so I recognize that. And Ross would have as well. And so I sort of recognized instantly that there was all these people reaching out and going, like, what do you do to, like, say, to be how you are and to walk yourself through this? And initially, I had been, by that time, I was coaching people one-on-one, and I'd pulled back from all of that because obviously I was in grief and couldn't. But I thought, right, I'm going to put together this course. And the Happy Me project, the name, had come to me like about 2 years ago. And it's weird, I found it not long ago. I found like the notes where I'd because none of my notes get deleted from my phone. So I found the notes from whenever it was. And I was like, oh yeah, I knew I had come up with that like ages before as an idea for something. So I picked this name, I picked my phone, and I sat at the bottom of my stairs and I was recording audios and creating like really basic like stuff. But it was all around, it was a 21-day course, and it was all around really basic stuff. Oh, my battery's going to die. Don't die on me while we're talking. It was all really basic stuff that I do every day to, essentially walk myself through all of the stuff that I was going through. And I put it out into the world without any pomp or ceremony or razzmatazz. And within a few weeks, I just started to see it take hold, and people really getting what I was doing, in that it was just stripped back. This is the basics of what I do. And if you do this, it will be a good starting point. And from there, because I noticed that it had some legs, I then went on to do events, one of which, in fact, were you at the first Newcastle one, Hayley? I think you were. The first event.
I was, yeah.
Yeah. And so I started to take it round, and then invite in, local businesses to get involved and kind of, be part of that. And it just went on and on from there. And, now we're in a position where I've written my second book, and there's been bigger events, and my first book did really well. And I'm kind of, astounded, but also like I have to keep reminding myself I'm not actually winging it, because there is some sort of plan. I might not have all of the details in it, but there is always some form of plan. And it really came off the back of, I always say it's probably the most organic piece of work I've ever done, because it came as an answer to what people were asking. I couldn't have, answered all of the messages individually, so I wanted to put that course together initially to go, right, if I give you this, and it was a 30 quid course, it was that, a lot of my work is very low end in price, and it's for good reason. And I'm challenged constantly by, business coaches who tell me I could charge more. And I get that I could, but I know I'm doing myself a disservice sometimes, but equally the balance for me is I want it to be accessible for normal everyday men and women. And I don't want them to get there and there be this big price point where they go, well, I can't access it again. And so for me, 30 quid course, I pushed it out, and it meant that if somebody was talking to me, I could, send them a message back, but then I could also say, listen, here's some actual tangible stuff. Because when we're in the shit, we want to know, is there something I can actually do? I don't want just somebody to give me platitudes and I'm really sorry you're going through this. That's all very nice, but what the fuck do I do? Like, how do I get myself out of this? And so, that's how it all began. And, I've been so pleased at where it's gone, and it's given me the opportunity to meet all kinds of amazing people and also feel and recognize that we're all very similar, and we're all scared and none of us know what we're doing, and we're just trying our best. No matter what level everybody's at, it's all the same.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I connected with you so well, because I ended up coming into your world through your Happy Me project work. And it was definitely because I'd spent years trying to sort out my mental health. And it was one of those things where I had a lot of people who were perhaps doctor this and doctor that, trying to tell me how to do it. And it wasn't striking a chord with us, where when you do it, Holly, it's very much like you share your vulnerabilities, you share your story, and I could see a lot of myself in you. And then that made me think, well, okay, if Holly can do this, let me listen more to her and she can teach me how to do it myself. Because I'd felt so many times in the past that I would get to a hurdle and then I'd try to get myself out of it, and I'd be like, right, okay, I've kind of done a half job. And then I would just accept it and not necessarily fix things long term moving on. And I think we need people like you that can speak to us as a normal human being, rather than someone that, like you say, says all that big words. And I love the fact that you say you take the bullshit out of it, because you completely do. It makes so much more sense when you speak to me about mental health and how to make it better, because I feel like you're speaking to me on my level.
Yeah, and I love that, and I'm so, because that's everything to me. And I think you're so right. The thing is, when I'm doing the work that I do, I'm often speaking to myself as well. Like, my work comes from such a raw place that I think, people have watched me in dark places, and they can, they've been able to see my stuff that has happened in my life. And I think without that understanding, it would be easy to dismiss. Whereas I think when we know, and I know myself, if I've worked with somebody, whether it's a coach or a therapist, I need it to be more than just you went to school. I need it to be more than that. And people can tell the difference. And when we are inundated online with life coaches of some form, or some self-development coaches, and there's a heap of crap out there. There is a heap of disingenuine, expensive shit out there. And hopefully that will shift in terms of regulation and stuff over the next few years. But right now it's a minefield, and I think we've got to find people that we connect with on that level. And I think there's a difference in terms of, you can see when somebody's really walked that walk and they do the work themselves. And I'm a huge advocate for therapy, but any form of therapy that I've had hasn't been the solution for me. It hasn't. CBT doesn't work for me. It's not a solution that works for me. And everybody is very different. And I fully believe that we can have a double pronged attack at things. You might do therapy and coaching and hypnotherapy and whatever, you might have religion in your world or something else. And I don't think it has to be one thing. I think what is the most important is that we are not the same people. We're all different. We all have our own triggers and wants and desires and fears. And so we have to find the right people for us. And so for my way of being able to attract the right clients, and also I've got to want to work with the people that I want to work with people I like I want to work with people that I'm going to get excited for and get excited about. And my way of doing that is, if I'm the most me that I can be, some people will absolutely detest that. And they can go, because then I don't want to be around. I'm not going to want to work with people that like we just don't gel. That's not going to be fun for me either. I share my vulnerabilities and I share my mess and my chaos and all of that stuff, because I know that that's where we meet. Like, in terms of clients, in terms of human beings, we connect there. We don't connect in our polished. When we are polished and perfected and we're minding our P's and Q's and we're doing everything by the book, none of us are connected there. There's a great big wall between us. Whereas when we can go, oh my God, my house is a mess, or I had this awful thing happen, or I lost my shit the other day, or when we can talk on those levels, then people can go, thank God. And what we can then do is allow people to drop their shame. And, when I work with my clients, and whether that's in the membership or one-on-one or even at events and things, the one thing I'm always so conscious of is making sure that people feel able to let go of that shame. None of us move from a place of shame. We cannot learn about ourselves or try something new or feel safe to fail or feel safe to open up. If my clients came to me and I was super like, I've always got my shit together and everything's perfect, they might feel scared to share their behind the scenes, because that would feel, what if she judges me and all of that, which I absolutely wouldn't ever. And there's nothing that anybody's ever said to me where I've went, holy shit, like that's never happened. Because even though people come to me and they think that their chaos is unique, it's not. It's not unique. We're not as unique as we think we are. In all of that stuff, we're actually ridiculously similar. And I work with, people who are, super successful, famous celebrities that you may know, to your mum's on the school run, to, I work with all kinds of different people, and they might have, different ways of it presenting itself, but it's the same shit. It's the same stuff. So that's heartening, isn't it? We're actually all as chaotic as we're all the same. It's just that some people do a better job of hiding it online largely as well.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And it's like you say, I want to speak to somebody that I know has been through that shit. That they've been through the trenches. They might even still be in the trenches. And it's just like, you get that connection so much easier than you would if there's someone that's pretending to be prim and proper, and it's not necessarily the case.
And I do think as well, my Geordie voice doesn't do me any harm in that respect as well. I think we get told a lot, don't we, that the Geordie voice is friendly and all of that. And I do think it's a interesting leveler for people. Somebody's coming in with and not that I'm knocking anybody who has a posh English accent or any other accent in the slightest, but I do think we will often gravitate towards voices that feel very real and raw, and like they might have been through some shit. and Geordie accent, we do. We sound like we've been through some shit. The mines or something like that, something hard. It's cold and stuff. They've weathered that cold up there, so they must have been through some shit, something like that.
Yeah, she's a Geordie. She's hardy.
Yeah,
probably worked down in the mines when she was a young child.
Yeah, and the reality is, I'm soft as shit and I'm cold all the time. So it's a myth that
go out with no coats on.
Yeah. And we love to pretend that is a myth. I mean, now it is, because obviously I've been away from the north for a long time, and now I'm apparently a southern softie, even though I live in the Midlands. And I will wear a coat. I can't. In fact, what I do is bring out a hot water bottle with me, because I'm freezing. And no, I'm not going out with no coat on now.
So
as well.
So which part of the northeast are you originally from, Holly?
I'm from Benton. So I was born in Heaton, Falmouth Road, and then which is lovely now, and then moved to Benton, next to Benton Metro Station. And then my parents are over in Gateshead now, which is a different world to me. It's a whole different world. It's when you live over the East End of Newcastle, you're not just jaunting off to Bladen. It's not happening. Oh, it's different over there.
Different land.
I mean, there's horses, there's all sorts out there. So we live out there now, but I get up home now and then, not as often as I would like or should. And my kids love it when we go up, because we've got beaches in the northeast, whereas where we are literally the centre of England, so we do not have beaches. So even though it might be cold, they do quite like all that space. It's nice.
So do you have a favourite place that you like to visit when you come up?
Do you know, when I come up, I rarely get the time to actually visit enough places. It's always darting around seeing family, which is a good thing, and that's the reason for being there. But I going to the coast is really lovely. I love going into town. I love going along the quayside, and if I am lucky enough to get a moment on my own to go for a wander, I love just going for a walk along the quayside and going and finding some coffee shop and sitting there and looking at the Tyne Bridge and just being very Geordie and thinking, look at that Tyne Bridge there. That's the kind of stuff that I do. But I don't know anywhere. Like, that's the wild thing. I left home when, how old was I? I started leaving home when I was about 17 or 18. And I signed to Sony when I was that age and was doing up and down to London and touring and doing stuff like that. And then officially, I think I was like 20 when I officially moved out. So it's a long time that I've been away from home. So people will often say like, oh, where'd you go out in Newcastle? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, literally, I'm like a tourist now. When I go home, I've got no idea. And apparently I'm now a posh Geordie. So, you know.
I wouldn't say that. You've kept your accent very well.
Thank you very much. I'm a posh Geordie until I go somewhere where someone's like, Jesus Christ. And then I hear like an old clip of Byker Grove, or somebody sent me an old clip of me on a radio show not that long ago. And I was probably about 19. It's so funny. My voice seems very high pitched as well. Like I guess our voices do lower, but like, I'm like, all right, like I'm dead, like up here, like I'm dead, like up here. Every sentence, obviously, because I'm Geordie, starts with E. And I've years of not living in Newcastle and having to enunciate every goddamn word does knock it out of you. You know, like there's something lovely about being on a show like this, or being in Newcastle speaking to a Geordie, when I can just relax into my vowels and just like, it's just nice, it's easier. I don't have to phonetically do the phonetic alphabet on everything. Or I was talking to the girls the other day. I used to live in Essex for a while, and when I was at drama school, and I used to work in this bar, and they would give me the change. And I would get some balloons there. That was nice.
What was that? That was very random.
Random. What did I say to set off the balloons? Yeah, it was always the number 9, right? So in our accent, we'd say 9, but in Essex, they say 9. I'd say that's £9, please, and they would go, what? And I'd be like, £9. What? And then I'd have to go, 9. It's 9. And then they would go, oh, 9. Okay, 9. And I just used to, that used to drive me wild. So years of having to shift how you speak and to speak slower and enunciate does kind of knock out your accent a little bit. But, you know, I'm glad you can still.
Yeah, well, I'm very similar to that when I go home, because I'd probably go home like once every 2-3 months or something like that. I'm exactly what you said. I'm like a tourist. So like I'll go down the quayside and I'm stood there for 10 minutes taking different photos of the Tyne Bridge, like at different angles. And then I hear a Geordie accent and I'm like, oh, Pete, can you hear it? Can you hear it? It sounds lovely. And it's just like, what has happened to me? I've not even been away that long.
I always hear a Geordie. I just pick it up. I'm like, my Geordie sense is tingling. And I'm like there and I pick up a Geordie accent. So... we don't lose it. My friends of mine, they're always like, Geordies really love Newcastle. Like they really love it. Like they're into it they're always like, they're into it way too much. It's too much. Like they're way into it. But I do think there's something like, there's places like Newcastle. I think Liverpool's quite similar. I think Glasgow's quite similar in that we have such terrible history in some respects, like such poverty and such like real strong, like we know our identity. And I think, and I don't know how you guys felt, but, I grew up knowing our history. Like I came from a very politically motivated family. Everybody, my trade union dad and my trade union granddad, and, years of all of that kind of Geordie construction and all of that, shipyards and everything. And I think we know our history, and then the football brings us together as well. It's another kind of connector. And also we're far from other places. Like, we are up there in the cold at the top of the country, holding our own. And I do think it gives us a very strong sense of identity that I don't experience in many places. And I've worked and been in around lots of places. It's not the same everywhere else.
Yeah, we've got very similar, because both me and Angela are from Asherton, and that's very strong mining.
Asherton. It's like a pit. Yeah, I can't even say it.
Pitmatic.
Yeah, my granddad was from that way, and he used to speak like that. I can't do it. I'm not going to try. Okay, it's going to be embarrassing.
Angela's very good at it.
Yeah, it's never left me. Do you know what a cracket is, Holly? I ask everybody this.
What is it? A cracket?
Cracket.
No, I don't.
I didn't know this either.
No. Is that is it a your way like thing? Like, is it
like a Northumbrian word?
Yeah, I've never heard.
I guess, really. But no, a cracket is a little seat next to the fireplace. So you know what used to have like open fires?
Yeah.
Like a little seat that you would sit and warm yourself up on. A cracket?
No, I've never heard of a cracket. No, never heard of it. That's a new word. I'm going to ask around, see if my Geordie family knows what that is. My dad will. My dad's like he's lived away a long time on and off, like on the oil rigs and stuff, and he's like, what's that film East to East, where the Indian dad knows everything, he can relate everything back to India? That's my dad with Newcastle. Doesn't matter what it is, he can tell you champagne, he can tell you how that is actually Geordie, because I think it's something like the mechanism that kept the champagne from going flat was actually somehow designed by a Geordie. So my dad will bring champagne, French champagne will be Geordie. Like, he can somehow, there is a tenuous link, he will bring it back to Newcastle. So I'm going to ask him what a cracket is, and if he fails, he's failed at being a Geordie, and that's what I'll tell him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for it.
I will.
Report back.
I'll blame you.
So do you think living or coming from the northeast, Holly, do you think it's influenced you to what you do now, or?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I think in the northeast, and I came from a family who were very opinionated storytellers. As you know, jokes aside about my family being like union blokes and stuff like that, they can tell a good story. And I come from a chatty family who hold their own, they'll debate, and all of this stuff held me in very good stead. And I also think, when I first moved down to London and was doing the acting circuit and auditioning and stuff, the kind of working class, the snobbery that was around, even when I was young, and it's definitely different now, but there was still a lot of snobbery about, being working class. And I was lucky in that my dad, from being really young, really hammered into me, like, about knowing who you are and knowing your identity, and also accepting early doors, because of the way you speak, people will always know that you don't come from money. There will always be that tell, you will be leaking that out. And as long as you were comfortable with who you are, you don't have to change anything about yourself. And he would say, in terms of accent, he'd worked all over the world and had to learn to enunciate his words so that he could be understood. And he would always say to me, you don't have to lose your accent, but you do have to be understood. Don't be one of those Geordie knobheads who, starts thickening up their accent when they leave. And you're trying to not be understood. Like, that's not useful. But he was like, enunciate your words enough that if you say cracket or you say a Geordie word, that people can go, what does that mean? And I actually think that gave me a real strong sense of understanding that it was okay to adapt. It was okay to know who I was and not to really understand my own identity and really own that. It also gives you a strength of character, when I was, first going down to London. And I remember that one of the first incidents of like snobbery was I went to this meeting, and it was in this posh apartment with this record label executive. And I sat down and I was with my manager, and I hadn't said anything, which is unlike me, but I hadn't said anything for a bit. My manager had done the initial intros, and then I started speaking. And as I say, I was, it had just left, I hadn't really left Newcastle. So my accent was thicker than it is now as well. And I started speaking, and the guy went, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know that accent was real. Like that's me. And I remember, like, firstly, I was hugely like wanting to go off on one. Like I was hugely wanting to kick off, but I didn't. And I just sat there and I just pitied that guy's damn ignorance. And I just thought, what a shame for you that you are so in that bubble. And my dad's always said to me, and it always makes me laugh about, because he always goes, when people say things like, oh, I wouldn't go, it's grim up north, isn't it? And they say, you know, old tropes like that. My dad's like, let him stay down there, because it isn't grim up north and we don't want him up there. Like, he's like, if that's the mindset, stay down there, like stay wherever you need to be. But, you know, and I think that's given me, that has definitely come from that Geordie sensibility of knowing yourself. And I think living north, south, and in the middle, it's given me a real sense of, actually, there is a very culturally distinctive way that Geordies present themselves and talk, and we're very direct as a culture. And no, I'm not talking on an individual level, everybody's different, of course, and but as an on an individual, on a kind of from a collective space, we're very direct in our delivery. And we're also, you know, the whole Geordies are friendly. I think we are. Like, I do think we're very direct and inviting. And when I first moved to London, and again, not individual people in London are brilliant, people in Essex are brilliant. You know, when I lived down there, I've got so much fondness in my heart for all of them down there. But as a collective, there is a standoffishness that we don't get in the Northeast. And that's kind of where that kind of north-south divide thing, there's a much more of a fearful space when you are further down south, that even my, you know, London friends will fully be testament to. That when I started to recognize, and I'd been away from home a long time, and I would come back home and you'd have someone go, you look lovely in that top, and you didn't even know them, and you're like, it made me feel like really heartened, because I'm like, oh, that's, you know, when I first moved to London, I'd get a lot of all right, calm down, why are you so aggressive? And I'd be like, I'm not, like, I'm just being direct. And but I do think that has definitely shaped, you know, and the sense of humor. We have a, you know, be it certainly working class Northerners, we do have a good way of taking the piss out of ourselves whilst also delivering stuff. And I think that's, you know, in my work, humor is massive. Like, it's a huge part of it, being a bit silly and not take, like I always say, I take my work very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And I do think we can hear a message far easier when it's delivered a bit tongue-in-cheek or a bit cheeky or a bit like of a joke. We can often hear really hard stuff if we buffer it with that. So I do think that comes from where I grew up, and from a Geordie family who spend all their time taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like there's definitely a sense of hardship, but buffered by just the general personality of Geordies that just seems to be like a bit more lighthearted and a bit more like taking the piss out ourselves. And yes, we can get through it, and we'll just plow on anyway. And I think that's definitely a big personality trait of most Geordies that I know, and it's probably one of my favourite as well, definitely.
I agree.
So can we rewind a little bit, because as I mentioned at the top, like, I know you very much from your Happy Me project days, all of your mental health work. Can we go back a little bit to your acting days, your singing days? And specifically, I want to ask about Byker Grove, because we're on Geordie Pride. We need to mention Byker Grove, of course. So what was it like to be part of such, because it was iconic, wasn't it? It was definitely a massive part of our childhood. Yeah. And what was it like to be part of it?
I mean, brilliant. And I got on Byker Grove because I wrote a letter to the show, and I've shared this before, but I almost felt like this was like a urban legend, and that, like, did I write it? But like, did I handwrite it? Because I mean, it was early doors. We, you know, younger people, we didn't have like easy access to computers and stuff right there. And I think it must have been the first computer we had that probably had it for like about 20 years or something. And on my 30th birthday, my parents had put on a canvas. They'd found the letter on the computer somewhere, and they put it on a canvas for me, and it's really funny. It's written in Comic Sans, which just is horrific for all designers, and I'm so sorry, but that was fancy back then. That's all we had. We only had a few options. And I'd written, my name is Holly and I'm an actress. And then I'd written, I have brown hair and green eyes, and I'd coloured them in brown and green. And it said, I go to Saturday drama class, and I'm not shy one bit. I'd put that in just to let them know, like, I'm not, you don't worry about me. I'm not even shy. I'm not bothered. And at the very bottom, I'd put, can I have a part in the show? And then I put at the bottom, please write back quickly, because I just was dead keen to get a response. And they, because, you know, Byker Grove got in normal kids, we didn't have drama schools at the time up there. They got me in for an audition. I auditioned, I don't know, about 5 times. I didn't get the part, but I wasn't disheartened. All I was thinking was, then it can be done. Like, it can be done then, like, because I got on set. Like, so next stop, I'll be there. And 6 months later, they wrote a part in for me. And then I started on the show. And really, for me, I think because I was so young, I wasn't in any way jaded in my mind. Like, of course I could be on the show. You know, as an adult with adult eyes, we're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, that's an incredible thing. But I didn't have any limiting beliefs. I was very lucky in that I came from a family that, even though they were not in that world, my dad was a welder, my mum worked in a bank. It was a normal family. I didn't come from a stage school background. I came from a family that let me be, like, they just let me be myself. And that's such a gift. Like, if we can gift our children anything, let them be what they want to be. And so they just supported me. So I had no doubt that I could do that stuff. I just didn't. And so when I got on the show, I then, you know, went through that show. It was like, you know, my whole of my growing up was on TV, which definitely has its pros and cons, because obviously, as I said earlier, there was a lot of challenges that were faced going to a normal school. And for 6 months of the year we were filming, I would be on and off school depending on the storyline. But that had a lot of challenges that, you know, were in there. But I loved acting. I loved being on set. Like, I will still say now, my safest spaces, my most comfortable space is either in the wings of a theatre or sat on a TV set, listening to the noise of a TV set and all of the smells and the sounds and the light. Like, that was my safe space. That was where I felt the most me. Being in front of a camera, it's the least, like, it's, for a lot of people, that'd be the most uncomfortable they would feel. For me, it was, you know, when I was going to school, I was the weird kid off the telly. Like, I was different to everybody else, and it made me feel weird. When I was on set around creatives, they're all fucking weird. Like, that's fine. Like, you could be that weird self, and I felt safe. And so for me, it was such a learning. It was such a learning in the industry. And, you know, I might look back and laugh at my acting ability and all of that now, but it was so much learning within that and building of my confidence within that. And when I then left, my character left in a very traditional way of leaving, like a soap or a TV show. And I went to London, you know, to the bright lights of the big city. My character wanted to be a singer. And what had happened in real life was I'd been on, I don't know if you remember the Saturday show. I think it was Danny Bear was the presenter on it. And I'd been on there, and we went out for food, all of the people that were on the show. I think it was like the Blazing Squad. And do you remember the Blazing Squad?
Yeah.
The Blazing Squad. Where are they? And the girl who had been on like Pop Idol or one of those things, I forget her name now. Sarah Whitmore, I feel like that was her name. But anyway, we were all out for food. I got sat next to this manager, and I was chatting to her, and she was saying, I'm moving to this new management company, a music manager. And I must have said, oh, I'm a singer on the show on Byker Grove. And she then got in touch with, and then it ended up basically happening in real life that I was meeting record companies. And what ended up happening was my character left the show, left Byker on the Thursday. You see me getting the train down to London, you know, the whole, like, some like sad music in the background. And I'm off to the bright lights of the big city. And on the Saturday in real life, and it was just a fluke, it wasn't organized this way, I did Top of the Pop Saturday in real life as Summer Matthews. So it wasn't even the same name, which is another... Basically, Holly Valance was out at the same time, and she came from Neighbours. And even though our levels of celebrity were vastly different and we didn't look alike, Sony were pushing for me to, or maybe my management, in fairness, maybe it wasn't Sony, were pushing for me to change my name to differentiate us. And I think there was plenty other ways to do that. But anyway, I ended up getting pushed into being Summer Matthews. So now it feels like I had this alias that, you know, my sister will often go, what happened to Summer Matthews? Where did she go? I'm like, I don't know. So I ended up doing that after Byker. And so for me, for a time, it was like, well, you just write a letter and you get a job, and then you leave that job and you sign to Sony and everything's easy. And then when my single came out, it was, it was a weird time for music. People were no longer buying singles, and I had a single deal to then go on to do an album if it had done well. And nobody was buying singles because we just started to get like MP3 players and everything was becoming digital. And there was like all this weird stuff where to stop record companies just bulk buying records, you used to have to buy each one individually. So I'd be sending my family in to HMV on Northumberland Street with a big button thing, and they were like, just put them through individually, each one like that.
Oh, God.
Put them through. Can you imagine? But I remember when it came out, there was literally ones and twos between everybody in the charts. It was wild. They weren't being bought. So I got to 32, which actually in reality wasn't bad. But at the time we were watching Pop Idol and things like that, and people were getting to number one with their first record. So I fell into that crack. And on the Saturday, I knew where it was going to chart. Sunday, it went out on Radio 1. Monday morning, I get a call from Sony saying, thanks, it's been nice working with you. Dropped, done. So I'd went from 7 years in TV into signing to Sony, a year of doing Top of the Pops and MTV and Disney and Nickelodeon and all this, you know, recording in Marbella and exciting stuff, to like, boom, back to square one. So it was such a leveler for me, to say the least.
Wow, that's quite I know it's always, that industry is always quite ruthless. Well, I've never been in it, obviously, but you hear about all the ruthless nature of it and stuff, and that's just, that must have been hard.
It was the best thing that could have happened to me, though, in lots of ways, because it taught me to work harder, and it taught me to find a route. And one of my biggest things now is there's always a way around. And I also realized that I didn't want to be a singer. It just didn't, it wasn't something that I really enjoyed. And I felt very not out of my comfort zone. I just felt like I was doing somebody else's thing, and it wasn't me at all. I didn't enjoy it. And it took me a long time to actually even enjoy singing after that. I just didn't enjoy any of the experience. The only part of it I enjoyed was making a music video, which made me realize I just wanted to be an actor. And that was it, really. So it was tough. It was a nice version of tough. It wasn't actually tough, but it was a good way of, me early doors, remembering it can be just taken in a moment's notice.
What was your favourite one to do, Holly? Which favourite part, or TV series, or?
Well, I would say, there was lots, and I mean, Waterloo Road was a nice one to do. Leanne Galloway was my part, and I got expelled, and that was a fun one to do. But I have to say, as a fan of the show, The Bill was my favourite one to do. I played a drug addict on the bill who, what was her name? Was it Josie Clark, I think her name was. And I held one of the police hostage with a syringe, and it was all very actiony. And I loved The Bill growing up, and I used to watch it and think, I used to hate watching the actors on there, because I used to think I should be doing that, and was all envious. And when the audition came up, I rang my sister and I went, guess what auditions come up? And she went, prostitute on The Bill. And I went, no, crackhead. And she was like, you've got to get it. And so I went in oh my God, I looked so rough. I had my housemates, I wanted to look I was trying to look as skinny and drug addicty as possible, and no makeup. I had dark circles under my eyes. I'm trying to get into character on the tube on the way into the audition, tweaking and giving it loads, people moving away from me on the tube and that. And I knew I'd got it, and it was summertime, I think. When I auditioned, I was tanned anyway. Maybe I was just fake tanned, but I was tanned. And I remember I knew I'd got it because it came as I was leaving. The director went, the tan, can it go? And I was like, it'll go. It will go. And then when I went to do the part, because, oh God, I still feel nauseous thinking about the story. Because I knew the first few scenes I had to do were me. I'd been in the the first few scenes recorded where I'd been in the cells for a long time. So I was coming down off the drugs. So I knew I had to be like rattling from coming off the drugs. It was cold turkey in it. So I had to look rough and I had to feel rough. So in my wisdom, the day before, I said to my sister, why don't I just get absolutely fucked drunk, like really drunk? So we've got out, bearing in mind where I'm essentially a student. I mean, living in a very nice place, but I was at drama school still, or just finished drama school. And I left, I decided to leave to do Waterloo Road. So I was still living in the same area. So we've got this cheap bottle of vodka. This is not nice vodka. This is like basically just dregs of something, you know, like it's horrid vodka, that kind of stuff that'll like strip your stomach. So we've drank this, and we have drank a full bottle of vodka, and we've gone through the full cycle of drunk, you know, like fun drunk, phoning people drunk, laughing drunk, deep conversation drunk, the tears are coming drunk. We've gone full circle of all of the levels of drunk. I've had to be filming at like 7 o'clock the next morning across the other side of London to where we lived. I was so rough, I had to get off the tube at Stratford to vomit on the side of the platform. That's how bad I was. I was so over. I've got to set, and like that, I'm sweating, you know, the hangover. Like I was so rough. And they're putting the makeup on and making me look rougher, which was really not necessary. And you know, I'm doing all, and everyone's like, "Oh, she's really good, isn't she good?" like actually shaking, like I'm zoning out in that because I was so hungover. And like it's that thing on set where it's like, Holly's wrapped for the day, she's done, and like in my body, I was like when they said wrap, that should have stopped. The sickness should have stopped then, but it did not. It was awful. I mean, it looks great. I weirdly saw it a couple of years ago. I was lying in bed and I was watching telly, and I was watching like some random like UK Gold or then old channels that we used to have with like the reruns of The Bill. Loved The Bill. So I'm like sat in bed and I'm watching The Bill. I'm like, this is a great episode, loving it. And then I ran on screen, me. And I'm like, oh shit, that's me. That's weird. I obviously hadn't watched the rest of the episode or like read the rest of the script. So that was an unusual experience to suddenly not realize I was watching something I was in and then be like, oh, there I am. That's weird. But that was one of my favorite things to do because I was a fan of the show and I got to do scenes with people that I'd watched growing up. And yeah, that was it was only a 1 episode part, and it was one of my favorite ones to do because it was just I got to like actually act, albeit with a little bit of help from the day's shenanigans before. And I also got to be part of a show that I really was very excited about. And they should bring back, in my opinion, bring back The Bill, I say.
Talking about bringing things back in Byker Grove, is it actually properly coming back?
Well, apparently, and I only knew because the BBC suddenly my phone started ringing off the hook a couple of months back. And I was like, can you come on the show and talk about Byker Grove coming back? And I was like, is it? Okay. Yeah, sure. So I got wheeled out as an ex-Byker Grover and just like brought round to talk like a talking head. Apparently so. Ant and Dec have the rights to it. So I've been waiting for years. Like, come on, guys. Let's sell these so Holly can get a little payday of all of those, you know, we get those royalties checks. They're not coming these days. They're not actually checks these days. They used to be though. And that felt better somehow. It felt like more exciting. Oh, we're checking the post. But yeah, so apparently they are. And it was, yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I haven't heard. I mean, there was so many people that were in Byker. I can't say that I'm going to be top of the list to be in there, but you never know. If the call comes, I'll let you guys know first.
Would you do it?
My old, I don't know, you know, like anything now, I've done a couple of bits of acting over the last couple of years and it's been fun. And I'm always about, if it's fun and it fits in my world, then of course I will. We don't have to be one thing for the rest of our lives. And I love acting. Whether I would go, I think it's so, I was going to say whether I would go back to something full time, I don't know, but I guess it really depends on the circumstances and on what was on the table. My oldest daughter wants to be an actor, Brooke. So she's already been like, we need to move back to Newcastle. If that happens, we move back. We go there and I will learn a Geordie accent. and I will be in the show. So she's already like putting herself forward for that one. So maybe I'll have to. You don't know.
Yes. Awesome. I love that. You mentioned Ant and Dec as well, and we've got to ask about Ant and Dec because, yeah, massive TV legend. My girls absolutely love Ant and Dec. When you were working with them when you were younger, what were they like? Did you look at them and know that did they have something special that you thought they're going to be massive? Or
so I wasn't the era when Ant and Dec, so I did work with them on it, but they came back. So I was that bit too young to be their generation. In fact, I grew up watching them, and not even so much on Byker Grove. I don't know if I actually watched Byker Grove before I was in it. So I was a little bit young, but I grew up they were PJ and Duncan to me. And I once went to see them at Whitley Bay at some like music festival, like we used to go on there. And my mum and dad had helped me make this big, massive banner that said, "I love PJ and Duncan." And every time I put it up, people said, "Put it down, we can't see." And I felt well embarrassed, because I'd made this massive, big sign. So I was a little bit young. And then when I got on the show, they weren't on it. And then they came back and they did a scene. So Jeff, who was the Grove leader, Jeff Keegan, he died. They blew him up, which was terrible. They blew him up. And so they brought back a lot of the old like characters, and Ant and Dec came back for that. And I would have been about 13, I think, because I saw a clip of it on YouTube, and I remember thinking I was dead grown up at the time, and I look so young. So I did a scene with them then, and they were lovely. They're just, I mean, without being cliched and obvious, they're really nice lads. They're just normal Geordie lads. And, as we've already talked about in this podcast, it's very much steeped in Newcastle is a good leveler for people in many ways. And most people really don't lose that sense of where they're from. I think when they're from the northeast, and they certainly used to have a lot to do with the people that had been at Byker Grove from the beginning, the casting directors and some of the producers and stuff, and the crew that were there for years and years. Ant and Dec still spoke to them, and we did a 10-year reunion, I think, after it 10 years after it had finished. And we did like a reunion thing then, and I met them there, and they were lovely. I think what you see is what you get with Ant and Dec, and my experience, albeit very minimal, has always been really nice. They've always been very, very lovely, very warm and engaging. So I didn't see them growing up, and I think their era was a really special time at Byker Grove when they were in it. And again, it was a time when there wasn't anything else to watch. So they became very big because it was the right time for it as well. I have seen them sharing on their social media some of their old songs recently. I don't know if you've seen it, and absolutely ripping themselves. So funny watching them do their rapping. It's brilliant. And I dread to think where it is because I don't remember. Oh God, I don't even want to bring this up. I once rapped, and I'm not doing it again. I rapped the whole Let's Get Ready to Rumble rap on a radio show. I don't know if I was prompted to do that or if I did that off my own steam. And I think we can both probably guess that it was probably off my own steam. But I don't know what radio show that was on. Somewhere, somebody has a copy of me rapping it. What was I doing?
Love that.
Someone's going to find that.
Do it again now. Give us an exclusive.
I'm just going to say, go on.
Not that long ago in the car, and this sounds like this is a reoccurring thing for me, and I'm into it. It's a good song though. I don't know if I would know where to start. I'll think about it, and then I'll send you a video of it.
Yes.
I'll have a little remember of what it sounds like, or whoever has that recording will send it to us and shame me with my rapping.
Yes, if you're out there, holler. Let us see it. Get it on YouTube. Tag Holly.
Imagine they will as well.
Oh, I love it. So let's go full circle, I suppose. And you mentioned about your influences growing up and such, and obviously mental health is a massive part of the work that you do. How do you think in the Northeast we can, suppose, better address mental health in the region?
I think, like lots of pockets of the UK, the Northeast is still a little behind in terms of the conversations around mental health. there is still a bit of stigma, and I do see it when I come home. And when I started doing the initial events and stuff within Newcastle, it came about after a friend of mine, Sophie Graydon, who was on Love Island and, you know, had done lots of things in the Northeast when she took her own life. And I saw spate. When I was younger, I knew a lot of people that took their own life. And that always terrified me. Like, it really terrified me. And it always, and I don't know, I mean, it's an obvious thing to say this, but I felt it so viscerally when I heard about it, because I really, really believe that there is a way forward and a way out. And when we're in those desperate places, we really think that then there isn't. And there will be lots of your listeners and lots of people that we all will know that have experienced those things. And I just always had this feeling of like, there has to be a way to reach people. And when that happened with Sophie, and then a few people around the same time around Sophie, it was this, for me, it was such a pull to go back up and make those conversations happen. And sadly, every time I go up to the Northeast and do events, the change is minimal. If I'm being honest, I think there's still a long way to go in the Northeast, particularly with men. And a friend of mine, Anthony Hutton, who is up in the Northeast, and you should definitely get on the show actually, because he's one of our lot, and he's doing a lot of stuff with men at the moment, which is great. And I'm supporting him where I can in getting men to talk about their feelings. And I know it's not just men, it's women too, but you know, there is this very old school mentality with some Geordie blokes that is holding them back from being able to work through some things. And it's really scary. And I think there's still work to be done. And I think we reach them, men and women, in the ways that we've just said. You know, at the beginning of this, we reach them by the stuff that I'm doing, the stuff that Anthony's doing, the real raw, nitty gritty, said with a Geordie voice, said with some swear words in it, said with some honest, you know, no bullshit approach, because Geordies can't take bullshit. We don't do, as a culturally, we don't do flowery very well. And we don't need to be able to reach people. And I think, you know, from my own work, I've often been able to reach people from, and not just Geordies, I would say like a lot of working class areas where they think, that stuff's just not for me. And I've found that I've been able to attract a lot of people in my spaces because of that directness and cutting the crap. Like, you can't talk to somebody who's just, you know, witnessed their partner dying, or their, you know, they've just had the 10th miscarriage, and just pretend it's like, let's just, you know, think happy thoughts about and move forward. Fuck that. Like, no, let's address the fucking trauma and pain of all of those things, and then we'll find a way through it. But we'll also recognize that along the way, there's going to be much back and forth. And it may be that sometimes we will always have to revisit this stuff. And I think when it's said with a directness and an honesty, I think that's the way that we reach people in the Northeast, and most people in fairness. But it worries me sometimes when I come home, because I do see a disparity compared to some places still, which it kind of shocks me. But then I guess it's, you know, maybe it shouldn't, but it still does. And maybe that's me being in my own bubble of doing this work all of the time. But I will continue to keep coming up to the Northeast, and I'm looking at getting some dates up there as soon as possible. We're hoping in March, I'm going to be doing a Happy Me and a Cup of Tea tour, which will be much less pomp and ceremony as the bigger Restival events that I do, but will give me a chance to meet people and just to have a chat. And really what we're talking about, this on a level chat where you can talk to me, and it's not, you know, we see a lot of these self-development events and we see people on a big stage and they're untouchable and it's some kind of guru worship bullshit. And that's not how we move ourselves forward. We move ourselves forward through big conversations and honest conversations and tears and cups of tea. And that's, for me, what it's, you know, that's where we reach real people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. And this probably is an ideal time for you to, like, where do you want to take the Happy Me project? Like, what are your big plans for it? And have you got anything coming up in the next few months that any of the listeners can sign up for?
Well, hopefully, if I pull my finger out over the next few days, I will have some dates for the Happy Me and a Cup of Tea tour. So that will be some dates around the UK where we can just have a chat, and it will be an excuse to go to different places and really meet the people that follow me online, or have done my events or courses or bought my book. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I'm going to just tell you lot because it's a secret amongst us, right? Just us and your listeners.
Yeah.
But I do have a book coming out at the end of the year, in September. And this is all going to be around confidence and self-belief. And I'm really excited about this one. And it's going to be a really, really important book for everybody. And I'm really excited to get that out in the world. So I will be focusing a lot on build no nonsense approach to self-esteem and self-belief. And I think that often comes, the fundamentals of everything is how we feel about ourselves and how we can also present that, how we can appear more confident as well. And I'll be using some of my acting skills in that respect as well. So lots of stuff coming out with book stuff. There will be some kind of big, event later in the year for that, and lots of smaller events. And I'm also going to be doing a lot of other people's events over the next few months as well, which is really great. So I'm going to pop those all out there. So if people are at different festivals or events, I'm just trying, I'm also, rather than doing everything myself and my own stuff, I also do want to go to events and speak at other people's stuff and enjoy what they've done too and get different perspectives and stuff. So I'll be doing a lot of that this year. And then I'm going to be just chucking out some short courses. The membership, the Happy Me Project membership, we are now opening and closing the doors, whereas prior to that, the doors were just open all the time and anyone could come in. And that's not to be some kind of elitist club that people can't come into, even though all the cool cats hang out in the Happy Me Project, So there is one there. But the reason I'm doing that is to try and, just have, one of the things that's important in spaces like that is that people feel very safe in those spaces, and that I think when there's an open door policy, I think sometimes it's a mental shift, I think, but there can be that feeling that we want to get to know the community that is in there to feel safe enough to share. And also when new people are coming in, I'm always conscious that even though it's online, it does still feel like walking into a new space, that it would, potentially feel nicer for people to come in at the same time as other people and not feel quite as I'm the new person in a space where everybody must know each other. So I will be focusing on the Happy Me Project membership as well. But this year, I know at the start of the year, everybody has all of these like really heavily put together plans. Going with the flow sounds way too chill for who I am as a person. But I'm tapping into what I've always done, which is jump in with both feet and give stuff a go and probably do it last minute. And I'm trying to just be audacious as fuck and bold and just see where things go and ask for more things, which I think for a moment I'd forgotten that that's how I've always done things. I always joke that the way that I got Byker Grove is literally still the way I do business now. There's nothing much. I mean, we've barely moved one notch up from Comic Sans and colouring in my hair colour brown and my eyes green. We're one notch up from that. And you know what? People don't ask for what they want, so they don't get it. And as my cup says, and you probably can't see it, yay, Shy Ben's getting out is what is on this cup. And we can't, and I feel terrible not being able to plug whose it is. Own this, where this cup came from, it's a nice cup. And Shy Ben's getting out, as Geordies, we get that drummed into us. And I was definitely taught Shy Ben's getting out. You don't ask, you don't get. Or my granddad used to say, grasp the nettle. I don't know if that's a Geordie phrase or was just something he said, but grasp the nettle, like be brave enough to go for something that might feel a bit scary, grasp the nettle. And I've always done work in that way. And so this year I'm very much just going, I'm going to grasp the nettle, I'm going to ask, and I'm going to see where it takes me. And so far, I've done some quite big things. I've kind of, because I've asked. And then everyone, like I just did another podcast, the ADHD podcast, which is a big podcast. Mm. And I did it. And then everyone started messaging me going, how did you get on that? And I was like, I just asked, can I come on your show? And he went, yeah. And they were like, oh, like thinking it was bigger than that. I'm like, they were like, oh, and how did you pitch it? And I'm like, just messaged them on Instagram and said, can I come on your show? Because I think I'd be dead good on that. And so I think that's what I'm going to continue to do this year. So for people to kind of follow and see what I'm up to and what random shit I'll be chucking out there, because it might be random, I don't know. Just make sure you follow me in all the spaces. Instagram, I'm heavily on Instagram. I'm doing TikTok stuff at the moment, which I haven't been, and I'm regularly doing TikToks. Should I try and speak again? Solely focusing, that was hard to say, solely focusing on confidence and self-belief. So I'm just doing short tips on confidence and self-belief on there. So if that's an area that your listeners find that they dip in, then I'm going to be putting all of that on TikTok, and there's pretty much daily tips and hacks and stuff like that on there. So I am doing the TikTok so that I can become big on TikTok, and then my children will be impressed by me. That's the only thing. So help me to look like a cool mom and look good. I mean, I'm never actually going to be. They're mortified, aren't they? Of course they are. But go and follow me on TikTok, and come and say hi. You know, I'm very accessible in what I do, and I have boundaries, but I also do like people. So, chat to me. Let me know we came from here though as well.
Yeah, I would say that as well, is that you are just, whenever I'm feeling stressed or low in confidence or just low in mood, I say my little, I think I need a dose of Holly, and then I'll come and find you online, and like, you just always make me feel so much better. So if you're not following Holly, definitely do that, because a pick me up is probably a good way of describing you, Holly. That's
just don't put me on loudspeaker. You have to listen to me in your headphones, because I can't promise I won't swear.
Yeah. Don't say Holly in front of your children.
No. Well, you might. I don't know your kids. Your kids might be very direct. They might be feral. I don't know. They might.
Right. So to finish off, we have got some quick fire questions, if you're up for that.
Go for it. I love a quick fire. Like I've got to sit up for it. I'm ready.
Right. First one, Holly, is the number one thing you miss about not living in the Northeast?
Being able to speak properly. Geordie directness, humour, and being able to speak properly. That's what I miss.
Way aye.
Exactly.
Stay out in the Northeast, coast or countryside?
Oh, coast. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, my parents live in the country, but no, it's muddy. No, coast, please.
Next one. What's your most favourite iconic landmark?
Oh, the Tyne Bridge, without a doubt. Just the Tyne Bridge. Like when my husband was alive and we would drive over, he would always do his Geordie accent on the Tyne Bridge. We'd get on the Tyne Bridge and he'd go, "Oi, on the Tyne Bridge, like, oi, we're going in the tune, like, we're gonna buy a shirt in the tune." That's what he would say the whole way across the bridge. That's all I can hear when I go across the bridge. "Oi, gonna go in the tune and buy a shirt. Oi, how we're gonna do?" So yeah, that Tyne Bridge.
Brilliant.
I love that. And my last one is, what is your go-to Greg's order?
Cheese and onion pasty. Oh, they're calling it a bake now, but whatever. Cheese and onion pasty.
Yeah.
What's yours? I want to know what yours are. Now I want one.
Mine is a chicken bake.
Nice. Good second choice. I'd go with chicken bake.
Yeah.
Do you know what I like? What I've just discovered? The cinnamon muffins.
Oh,
I'm not sure about that, Angela. A cinnamon muffin.
Cinnamon muffin.
That's very pot. That is cinnamon. You're just we're like pasty kids over here, and you're cinnamon muffin.
Yeah, she lives in Morpeth now, Holly.
Oh, that's why you didn't say.
Oh yeah, cinnamon Morpeth now,
darling. They only eat cinnamon muffins in Morpeth. Of course they do.
But then before I have my cinnamon muffin, I like a good sausage roll.
Yeah. And there she is. There's the real Ashton lass. There she's back. You Angela, to be honest. The listeners are like, we thought we'd lost Angela to Morpeth. She eats cinnamon muffin and quiet in a
Ashton dummy, you see.
Now I just want all of the food we've said to eat immediately. I mean, people joke with me about like how many Gregs there are in Newcastle. I didn't realize how much we're into it. Like I've never been in another city that has Greg's open on a night out. That's not a thing.
Sausage roll after a few beers.
That's not a thing. Like, and I think people from the Northeast think that's a thing. That's not a thing. That's a Northeast thing. Nobody else eats a cheese and onion pasty on the way home after a night out.
Cheese.
And definitely no one's having a cinnamon muffin on the way out, except in Morpeth, where they do.
Well, of course, you've got to mix in with the folk.
You've got to. I love it.
Hey. Last question, Holly. So, and finally, what does Geordie Pride mean to you in just 3 words?
Oh God, pressure. Geordie Pride in 3 words. Oh Christ, I don't know. I'm having to think about this one. I should have prepared this one. I like to never prepare, but in 3 words. I've never said anything in 3 words.
This will be difficult for you, Holly.
It will be difficult. Okay, so Geordie Pride for me, being yourself would be probably what I would bring it down to. Being yourself, and everything that encapsulates within Geordie Pride.
I think that's really lovely and also very Holly, because that's exactly what you do.
Yay! Well, there we go. We did it. We ticked a box. We went full circle, and we talked about all the things, and it matched perfect. I feel like I should pat myself on the back for coming up with that so quickly.
Yeah.
Well done, mate.
You're very on brand for being a Geordie. Well done.
Thank you so much. We do like to have a lot of Geordie stuff in this house. I mean, there is a lot of black and white that is in this house. We do not have red and white in this house. It's not a thing. I mean, I'm just trying to look around. There's no doubt there'll be something Geordie related, because that's what we do. I mean, it's just been my daughter's birthday, and she is a new... Oh, here we go. I was just about to say, look, something Geordie related. Just like there, busting out that. We made a Geordie birthday cake for my... I say made it. I bought the cake. I decorated it. So there's Geordie stuff about, it's here to remind me of who I am and all of that. It's like, stick a rock running through me, black and white, and that doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Yeah,
Good
exactly. Same as me. Good lass. Right. So we'll wrap up there and we'll let you get on with your evening. But do you want to just share where the best places are to find out about your membership and all of the other lovely stuff you've got going on? And I'll pop all the links in the show notes as well. You need to get Holly's first book. It's fabulous. And then obviously our second one when it's coming out.
Exciting. So if you go to iamhollymatthews.com/all-my-stuff, you will find all my stuff, and you will find links to my social media. But on most of the social media, it is I am Holly Matthews. So if you Google me and you can't find me, then the internet is broken and you must phone somebody. So come and say hi, let me know that you're here, and I look forward to chatting to all of you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for joining. We've really enjoyed chatting to you. And everyone follow Holly.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support Geordie Pride further, then don't forget to subscribe, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram @Geordie Pride. Until next time, keep that Geordie Pride shining bright.